Thank you for tuning into another episode of She Laughs, a podcast dedicated to bringing you honest and transparent viewpoints in this daily faith journey. Now join with me as we listen to T and Kristal discuss the latest.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Kristal.
What's up, everybody? It's Tanisha.
And welcome to another episode of She Laughs. So we're glad to be back. Of course, we're in another week of quarantine. It's getting real out here, people. But we are excited because we have a special guest on today, and we are going to allow him to introduce himself.
Hey, everybody. This is John Michael McKinney, the senior pastor of the Impact Center Church in Lithonia, and also the podcast host for Today with John Michael McKinney. And I'm joining here with my two, my two wonderful friends. Excuse me for being out of breath. I just came from upstairs, downstairs, and back up again. And I'm not the best in shape with this quarantine. So quarantine goals, maybe I will lose some weight, maybe not. We'll see. But I'm excited. I'm excited nonetheless to be able to share with the wonderful host of this show. And I'm looking forward to just sharing with you guys as you listen in and tune in on this particular podcast. So thank you so much for joining.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for being with us. So how we start this show, guys, you know, we have a new segment called Quotables, where we just talk about some interesting quotes or something interesting on social medias that has caught our eye. And so today, T, what's your quotable?
Many of you know that I'm a hairstylist, so I follow quite a few hairstylists on social media, and one that I follow made the statement that was pretty funny to me. She said, "I feel like everyone is a week away from doing something traumatic to their hair," and I agree. Some of these selfies and some of these videos that people have put out, and I see a big difference in how the hair looked a few weeks ago. Especially these anchors who are doing they're doing their podcasting from home. Well, not podcasting, but they're doing their news anchored from home. You can see who really had a glam squad with hair and makeup and who are now struggling. So that was pretty funny.
I saw one news anchor's hair. I thought the hair was the news. I thought it was breaking news. I really, in my mind, I said, oh gosh, like Corona is like really hitting hard. And then I realized that's just the new trend right now. I guess it's part of the natural look, perhaps. I'm not sure.
I'm going to be honest. I have realized that a lot of these celebrity men out here have been dyeing their hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What color are we talking about? Like blonde and red and fuchsia?
No, they've dyed.
No, like the Just for Men black.
Because the hair is going gray.
Oh yes.
Well, you know, it's like if in fact the Bible says that we go from faith to faith and then glory to glory. I feel like when a man dyes his hair, it's a mark of just transitioning to another place, and it's not necessarily about hiding the gray. It's about embracing the black, if that makes sense. I felt glory on that word right there. I should really preach that. Because now I will say this, I don't dye. I just take time. If I ever hear this repeated on social media, I will deny it categorically, but I will say this to you guys. I don't dye my beard. I take time and I get a pair of tweezers and I pluck out the gray hairs that are actually in my beard. And so that takes some time and dedication. And I will say it's not a lot of gray hairs right now. We haven't even talked about the gray hairs on my chest. I'm going to leave that alone. But just on my face, because the gray hairs on my chest looks like, you know how when they used to call it turkey. No, I'm sorry, they call it like ground meat or something with man's nappy chest hair. Okay, yeah. Mine looks like when you have ground turkey and it's starting to go from pink to gray right before it gets brown. So it's like I have like intermediate cooking ground turkey on my chest. Oh, God. Good morning.
Good morning, man.
Yeah.
All right, guys, Lord. So my quotable this week is this. Your jump shot is always going to be weak. Stay out of the parks.
Oh, is that from that mayor from
Yes,
Chicago.
Chicago's mayor. She said your jump shot's always gonna be weak. Stay out of the parks. As you know, with everybody on quarantine, all of a sudden the parks is filled up. And I'm gonna need you to say your jump shot. Gonna stay your same jump shot. Stay your butt at home. Thank you.
Um, I'm trying to get like a correlation out of that because I don't even play basketball. So I think I mean I go to the park, but not to do a jump shot. But I get the message. I totally get the message. I think my jump shot is weak. Period. Honestly.
See, but I mean, my jump shot is weak. But I ain't trying to go to the park all of a sudden to try and practice it in the midst of a quarantine. We got some
Right.
that's out there and you just taking up space. And I don't know if y'all saw the belt line in Atlanta this weekend because it's
Yes, I saw
open and people are
picture.
still out there walking. And guys, we're supposed to be practicing social distance. And why all y'all gathering at the park?
Oh, I see now. Okay.
Just saying, stay your butts at home. So that's all I got to say about it. So John, this is the part where if you got a quotable, if you've seen something, let us know. You got anything to share?
I don't think so I don't think I do. Let me tell you here's my whole thing. I have to explain this to people all the time. I'm on social media, and of course I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I haven't done Twitter. I think I had a Snapchat at one point in life somewhere, and I'm not sure exactly what happened with that. I still don't understand the purpose of Snapchat. But when I'm on Facebook, I normally get on long enough just to post whatever I post, and then I'll come back to review the comments and the engagement and the shares. And outside of that, I think I need to do a better job. I really don't spend a lot of time just on Facebook and looking for things and looking at different whatever's floating around, unless it's something funny. Like a lot of people are doing TikTok things, or there are certain Facebook pages that are just showing like crazy comical short videos. But outside of that, I haven't seen or come across any type of inspiration or quotable on Facebook. I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
I need to do a better job. Maybe the next time we do this, I'll probably more than likely have a quotable. As of today, I feel like I'm the runt in the group.
Oh, no. Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and get right on into our topic and why we have Pastor John Michael McKinney on today. So, T, what is our topic for the week?
We are discussing the prophetic and what all it entails, and more descriptive what exactly it is for those who are unsure of it.
Yes.
Awesome topic. Am I to participate and lead in this topic here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, so I guess where we start, I think the prophetic has this is something that it's one of those words that's always discussed in the church, and then depending on what church you're part of will determine the potency behind that word, and more so the validity of the movement. So, like, some churches embrace the prophetic more so than others. Some churches don't believe in the prophetic at all. So I knew a woman that was part of the Episcopalian denomination, and her argument was that prophets were no longer needed. Number one, you don't really see them in Scripture in the New Testament as far as operating in the offices as you would in the Old Testament with the likes of Jeremiah, Isaiah, Elijah, Elisha, even Moses. I mean, Miriam, Deborah. Like the list goes on, right? And so you don't really see that play in the New Testament outside of Paul mentioning about the what we call the ascension gifts, the fivefold, which includes the apostle and the prophet, the pastor, teacher, and evangelist. And so the argument is that what I find in a lot of people's demeanor now is that they feel like, well, what's the point of having, or what's the purpose of having a prophet now in today's church? We can hear God for ourselves. We don't necessarily need to have someone that stands in between us and God to articulate what the Lord is saying, or why would God use someone to tell me something I already know? I hear that a lot. Or, what's the purpose of having somebody like that even in the church today when we all worship the same God, we worship the same Spirit. And so inevitably we are able, or we should be able to pretty much commune with God on our own, and for some reason we can sometimes assimilate the fact that, of course, once Jesus was crucified, and once he was committed to that ultimate goal that the Father had laid out for him, which was suffering and dying for us and then being resurrected. The idea is that after that, you don't necessarily see the role of the prophet in the New Testament church, when in fact, Paul said that the foundation of the church and everything that we do in our, what I would call our church momentum, or our ministry momentum, is built on the foundation that is laid on the apostles and the prophets. And so though one sector of people would agree that the prophetic is an antiquated word or an antiquated movement, it no longer has purpose. But then there's another group, which I'm a part of that group, right, that believes that, of course, we need the prophetic. It's very important to have active in our churches. And more importantly, not just the prophetic alone, but we need trained, seasoned prophetic voices that can guide us in the right direction in times where, necessarily hearing the Lord speak audibly may be scarce. Everybody doesn't have that certain place of revelation, and some people may not know how to articulate what the Lord is saying. And so it's great to have someone that is trusted, that is proven, that has a track record in the prophetic and has longevity, an X amount of years, as opposed to a novice that is just coming into their prophetic call or coming into their prophetic gift, but more so somebody that's been proven. Their words have been proven. We've actually witnessed what they've prophesied come to pass. And here's the thing with that. I think it's very important that when you're trying to judge the prophetic as far as how awesome a certain prophetic mantle would be on an individual, I think we've been inadvertently trained by way of experience in the churches over the course of the years, that we look at the fruit of a person that's prophetic based on what comes to pass or what does not come to pass when they prophesy. And so, of course, if a person prophesies something and it does not happen, we automatically deem them as a false prophet, when really they could be an immature prophet, or they could be someone that is still, coming into how not to hit. And how not to hit and miss is what I'm trying to say. And so, and then, of course, we look at how many words have come to pass, and we determine that based on how we judge the person who's prophesying it. So if a person has a track record for speaking or prophesying or decreeing things, and it always happens, and we can trust that whenever they prophesy something, we're going to see it happen, that alone should not be the measuring rod that we would use to judge the level of the prophetic on an individual, when really we first must start with what I call, and what the Bible calls, the fruit of the Spirit. Is that person humble? Are they long-suffering? Because wherever the fruit of the Spirit exists, the Spirit has found a house there. And so it's very possible for people to prophesy out of their gift, but not necessarily live out of their home where the Spirit has taken residence in. And so I think being able to see or determine adequately how humble a person is, how much humility is in their life, how patient they are. Do they exhibit the word walking in the earth? Do they exhibit our Lord Jesus in everything they say and do? And more importantly, do they point you back to themselves, or do they point you back to the Father? And that's an ultimate test there that we should judge anyone that's prophesying. I think when a person becomes aware of what's on their life in the prophetic, and then they spend so many years working in that call or working in that gift, and sometimes not even years. Sometimes it could just be, they look really nice to look at, and so it's not hard for them to build a certain type of social media following. And in the age that everybody is razzled and dazzled by visuals and not necessarily fruit, then anybody can throw up a Facebook page or Instagram page, and you can notice that they do have a strong prophetic gift. But when you go on their page, mainly what you see are their clothes and their designer outfits and their money, their cars, and they want the world to know how well they're living. Instead of, giving us opportunity to really inspect their fruit. And so what happens is people can put up a certain image on social media that is geared towards celebrating the person, but it's not pointing them back to the heart of the Father. And so I think one of the things that we're going to see, even with this particular movement that's going on amongst coronavirus and COVID-19 and things that are going to come, because there are things coming after we get through COVID-19. But I think once we get through this season, I think the purity of the prophetic is coming back. And I'm not necessarily only looking at the purity of those who walk in the prophetic, but more importantly, the purity of those who are seeking out God through the prophetic. I think the attention is going to be pointed back to the right direction. And I think a lot of the celebrityism that we're seeing among the church, and a lot of the Hollywood that's among the body of Christ, is going to begin to crumble. as those that really desire to point people to a certain place, those are the ones that are going to either continue or they're going to be raised up.
Okay. So I love, because you went right into one of our questions, which was how can you distinguish a prophet? And you said, by not just the fruit of their words, but the fruit of the spirit and where their house dwells in.
Correct.
So once you distinguish that prophet, like, how can you tell if you yourself have that gifting, or do you have to be born with it? Is it something you can ask for? Like, how does that work?
Sure. So I'll go back to the first question you mentioned. How is it that we're able to determine who a prophet is? I think ultimately it points back to discernment. I think every believer should focus more on their gift of discernment, and their arena of discernment, being able to discern what's of God, what's not of God, being able to be led into a certain place of believing. I think that's what the power of discernment does. It leads you to a certain place of believing, what to believe, what not to believe, when not to believe it. And so with the power of the gift of discernment, you'll be able to quickly identify who's who, what's what, if your discernment has been sharpened and is not lethargic. And so I think in trying to identify who a prophet is, we got to understand that just because a prophet has been identified, it does not necessarily make them God's prophet, because even the world has their own assimilation of what prophets are. And then you have prophets that are being raised up, such as like those that have come before us, Jim Jones and all these different people that would start these cults, and it would turn into something totally detrimental to the church. So I think coming off of the title of a person and going more into the discernment and the revelation of that person is where it will start as far as identifying who's who. And just because they carry a title does not make them on God's side. It could come across as a facade. So it starts with the discernment. I think it also goes into, as I repeated earlier, looking at their fruit and their lifestyle. And listen, we're not setting up a culture that judges people off of what they do or don't do, and how many mistakes they make determines when we cut them off. It's more so saying, hey, listen, your fruit is going to tell on you, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And so we have to train the people to be more so in tune with what's coming out of them, as opposed to what they're putting on people as far as their giftings and their talents. As far as a person identifying, if they are a prophet, as opposed to having a prophetic gift, as opposed to having the ability to prophesy. We're talking about three different areas. Mm-hmm. And so a person that is a bona fide prophet, and I can tell you this, in the 22 years that I've been doing this, I always get asked that question over and over again. What is the difference between a prophet and a gift of prophecy, or a prophet versus one who has the ability to prophesy? And it's very simple. I think we make it more complicated than what it is. Simply stated, you look at someone who is an Elijah, a Jeremiah, when you look at these Isaiah, Moses, and then you look in the New Testament, you look at people like Paul and Peter and Stephen. Okay, though they had the ability to prophesy, they weren't always in that role or in that sector or in that mantle. Whereas in Jeremiah, Isaiah, Elijah, Moses, they were, every chapter you read about them, they're always prophesying. So you look at the continuity of what's going on and the longevity of what's going on. If you find yourself in a place where you're always prophesying, you can't seem to turn it off. It's like running water, and you can always see and hear and convey to someone what the Lord is saying. That could be very well a sign that you, and notice I said that could be, I didn't say necessarily that makes you a prophet, but that could be a sign that you are either a prophet that you did not know of, or you're on your way to being developed or matured into a prophet, as opposed to someone who you prophesy in part, you receive sporadic utterances here and there. Your interest isn't really there. Your passion isn't really there to be a prophet per se, that is more so concerned with confrontation. Let me pause right here, because I think in the prophetic, that's where we kind of get the disconnect from. I think we are convinced that the prophet or the prophetic or a gift of prophecy is only supposed to edify, comfort, and exhort. When Paul listed that in the New Testament, that was only an expression of the different layers of the prophetic. Whereas in the Old Testament, when you see Jeremiah and Isaiah, of course, they would give comforting words and exhortating words and edifying words. But then, however, they would give confrontational words. You're talking about people that would confront nations, countries, about what they weren't doing and how they were falling short of the expectations of God. And then more importantly, they were able to grasp from the conversation of heaven and produce the results or the strategy thereof of how okay, you've fallen short, but here is what the Lord is saying. This is the strategy. This is the pivot point of how to turn this around. And then once you get to that place of fulfilling the strategy, here comes the exhortation. The Lord is going to restore. The Lord is going to bless. So it's a full expression. It's a full measure of utterance. And so I say all that to say that the prophetic is not limited to good words or feel good messages, but then in fact, the prophetic, when you have people like Nathan's who confronted David as to why and how he got into adultery with Bathsheba and conspired to kill her husband. That's the prophetic as well. The prophetic will confront you. The prophetic will deal with certain areas that you hide, and not to embarrass, but to more so say, listen, the Lord is against this, but he's still for you. And so then if we can deal with this, then let the Lord, through his prophetic wisdom and revelation and knowledge, deal with you in these areas so that you can experience true freedom. I believe that the prophetic will bring things out of you that sometimes deliverance may not do, or even counseling may not do. I think one moment in a pure prophetic flow with the Lord can break things off of you that you've been struggling with your whole life. And it's not to negate the power of deliverance or the power of counseling. I flow in deliverance, and I have a counseling business as well. So I know how all three correlate. But I found that wherever there is a prophetic voice, there's vision, there's revelation. You can partake of different arenas and different things that you weren't able to grasp. So when it comes to trying to identify the prophetic and where do I fall in this, and more importantly, do I have the gift or am I more so in the office? If you have a burning passion to reform, to address systems, if you have a burning passion for justice and injustice in what you see, and more importantly, to bring people or lead people into a certain prophetic place that God is calling them to, there's probably the call of a prophet on your life. If you desire to, or if you have a burden or a passion to just prophesy, just to speak things here and there, but you're really not interested in studying the office or the role or the mantle that comes with it, you more so probably have the gift of prophecy. We have to keep in mind, and I'll turn this back to you two ladies. You have to keep in mind that the prophet, the role of a prophet, is not just to convey the heart of God and the mind of God to people who may be ignorant or unaware, but also when you look at prophets in the Old Testament, they were people that addressed systems and government. So it wasn't just for a person or for a church. Prophets can have the anointing to actually reform a whole entire denomination, a whole entire generation, a whole entire world. If they're being placed and being received adequately, a prophet can come into a church and address the system that's going on in that church that may possibly be detrimental to the growth or the future expansion of the people within that church. Whereas a person who just prophesies can, in a moment, hear the Lord saying, I'm pleased with this or I'm not pleased with that, and then they just release that thing. But the prophets, they carry a heavier grace. They carry a heavier assignment to go in and deal with things more so than just prophesying to a person, if that makes sense.
Yes. So then it's safe to say, because there's a myth that I have heard that a prophet is born. So you've had it since your birth. And what you're saying kind of is the opposite, that you might be even now in the midst of your life being called into the prophetic, depending on where you see your heart's cry being at.
I'm more so, and that's good that you said that. I'm more so saying I do believe that when the Lord creates you and before he releases you into this earth, I personally believe that everything that you have need of is already in that place. When you come into the knowledge of God and you yield your life over, I think that's when your awareness bleeds over to certain areas that you probably did not know you had, but it was already there. That like you have people in the world that are psychics that were probably called to be prophets, but they're taking their gift into another sphere and it's under a different influence. But had they yielded to the Lord, they could very well be bona fide prophets, right? So I think I do believe that people are born with this thing. I believe they're born into it. I think just because you're born with it doesn't necessarily mean you're maturing into it. And so I think submitting to another prophet or a school of the prophets or whatever the case may be creates that environment or that arena for either your gift or your office to be matured. I'm more so thinking that in the course of the years, You could be born with something, but you won't come into the awareness of it until you hit a certain age or a certain season in your life. And so when I reference people just now coming into the prophetic or just now discovering that they have a call to be a prophet or a call to be in the prophetic, I believe that it's always been there, especially if you can go back and trace in history certain things that happen in life and your response, or even certain things that you were able to say or do, and it came nowhere else but from a supernatural place. Then you can go back and say, well, yeah, I think this gift has always been here. I just didn't know I had it. And so it's something about a particular season that cracks open that eggshell to another environment where you say, oh, wow, this is what it's been all this time. And I did not know I carried this, but now I'm ready to walk into it.
Okay. Perfect. So then I'm glad, because you just brought up something else, and it goes into our other question is, in the world, and I will say this, a lot of, we say saints and everything. And so a lot of people who are not Christian or don't believe in the prophetic, and right now we live in a time where people would rather dust themselves with seasoning and believe in psychics and everything. They say, well, what's the difference between a prophet and a psychic? You say you have prophets, and to them, that's just the psychic and everything.
Psychic.
So it's like, how do you tell them to be able to distinguish between the two?
Sure. So I think it's real simple. The psychics are not going to point you back to God. That's for sure. So that's the number one rule. Prophets, their whole agenda is to convey the heart of the Father in their message. And at the end of the message, they want to make sure that you're in line with the Lord. Psychics are more so going to speak to you concerning the universe and energy and all these different things, but not once are they pointing you back to proper relationship with God. Whatever is going to make the Father say, welcome, thy good and faithful servant, well done. That's the role of a prophet. Now, and in saying that, and I think everybody needs to understand that it is very possible for someone to be a prophet but operate from a psychic realm or a psychic spirit, if that makes sense. In other words, the gift and the call is there, but every day that person, though they believe in the Lord Jesus, they're not yielding who they are to the lordship of Jesus. And so because they want to do other things, or they want to razzle dazzle people, or even make money, or just not submit to the lordship of Jesus at all, they would go into the psychic realm. I believe if they repented and got saved and got themselves back together again, that gift does not go away. I think that gift will become more stronger in the kingdom. So when we're trying to figure out, like, who's who, is this person a psychic or are they a prophet? There are actually prophets that refer to themselves as psychics. And then, absolutely. And then there are psychics that refer to themselves as prophets. There's a church right here in Atlanta. I won't go to the name of it, but they just, there was a big magazine article on the internet where the church, the bishop and his staff, they hired a psychic to run the prophetic ministry of the church.
What?
Absolutely. Yeah. So and this person, when you read their credentials, of course, they've had some prophetic training here and there, but most of their fruit or work has been that of a psychic. And now they're taking the psychic and bringing it into the church to strengthen their prophetic ministry. And a lot of people were excited about that. So that's the classic case of compromise, which we have to say that subject for another day, right? But it's a classic case of compromise. And so I think it's ultimately the direction that the person points you to will tell you who they are, and the fruit that they produce will never lie, and it will tell you who they are. I think if we can stick within those two parameters, we really, whether you have baby discernment or senior citizen discernment, you just won't be easily fooled.
Got it. So then, he got me the senior citizen discernment.
Senior citizen discernment. Baby discernment or seniors, I'm talking about your discernment walks around with a walker and cane and everything. It's been around the block for a while. Okay. And nothing, y'all know how it is. It's something about, granny and granddad, man, you couldn't really fool them. Now you could really get by on everybody else in your family, aunties, even your mom and dad, but your grandma and granddad, they've been around, they've raised 2-3 generations. So when you come up there saying something or trying to spit game, they can peep it immediately. So that's why I call senior citizen discernment. It's been there and it's weathered the storm of more than one generation. So it's not necessarily dazzled by who you are in this generation.
Good. That's good. So then, say if someone believes they have the gift of prophetic, then what should they do next? How do you grow that gift? And also not only growing that gift, but understanding some of the attacks that come with that assignment.
So I think I'm going to start with the latter, and I'm going to work my way back to the former. I think understanding the attacks, and the reason why I do that is because Jesus said this. He said, "Who among you would build a house and not first count the costs that come with building that house?" And in other words, making sure that what you're trying to put together matches your current budget. And I think in that, when you feel or discern or you come into the awareness that you do have a prophetic gift or a prophetic call or a prophetic assignment, as you said, or even you're a prophet, I think first it comes with counting the costs. What kind of attack should you expect and should expect? And that comes from understanding the word. I think your word life is so important. Anybody that has an anointing or a gift of the prophetic or is called to the prophetic, or you are a bona fide legit prophet, I believe you should be studying the prophets in the Old Testament. I believe you should be reading Jeremiah and Isaiah and Lamentations and Ezekiel and understand, and even Exodus, and understanding, what their roles were of these prophets and what they did and how consistent they are. Not just the major prophets, but even Joel and Nahum and Habakkuk and all these different people. Like, I really believe, in studying the prophetic books, and studying the prophetic books, you're going to get prophetic revelation for your prophetic call. And so I think it starts first with your word life and prayer, and asking the Lord to keep you consecrated in a certain place where you're not yielding to the compromise of this world or this age or this era. And then understanding the attacks that come with it, understanding what happened with Elijah and Jezebel, and how there are certain things that come. I found that a lot of people that have a prophetic assignment, you're going to struggle with depression, fear, and anxiety in certain arenas. Those are some of the three common areas of attacks that will come, because they're designed to shut down the mouth of the person who either has the gift, the call, or the assignment to the prophetic. If the mouth is shut down, you can't necessarily lead people, because where the mouth speaks, the eyes open. Right. Mm-hmm. And so where you're speaking into a certain dispensation of time, that's where people's eyes begin to open up. That's why you find that many of the most powerful leaders we've ever had in history, it started with their mouth. Whether you want to go with Gandhi, whether you want to go with Martin Luther King Jr., Hitler even. I mean, these people rose to power not because of their skills or their talents. It was because of what they put into their mouth and what they regurgitated out. And so same as it is in the kingdom, I think a lot of the most powerful leaders we have, it started with a word and a mouth. And so you got to understand that if it starts with the mouth, most of your attack is going to be shutting down the mouth, confusing the mind so the mouth does not know what to speak, confusing the ear so the ear can't necessarily articulate whether this is sensual coming from me or whether this is spiritual coming to me. And so that's why, as long as our ears are yielded to the Lord and our hearts are yielded to the Lord, we keep ourselves in a good place where we're prophetically healthy, if that makes sense. And then now when we go back to your former question of more so, how do we hone in on this gift and how do we sharpen it and what should we do once we find out that we have a prophetic gift and we're called to the prophetic? It starts off, number one, by, and I'm pro this right here, talk to your pastor. I think in this timing, it's so easy to have access to so many different voices, whether it be our favorite social media person or who the big name person that's coming into the city to do a conference or a tour or whatever. And we try to gravitate to them. And I'm not going against that. I'm more so saying, if you have a local shepherd, you have a pastor, I think it starts with them. They're there to oversee your spiritual walk. And if they're doing it correctly, then when you go to them, there will be some type of agreement that will be made, or even disagreement. Now, I will say this, that just because you feel like you have a prophetic gift or prophetic assignment does not mean that in that moment your leader is going to launch you into the prophetic. There may be some other areas that need to come under subjection: your character, your faith. And I say faith is a big portion of it, because Paul says, let us prophesy according to our measure of faith. And if our measure of faith is out of whack, if in fact we don't really believe God, it's going to be very difficult for you to really prophesy. I found that the person that struggles sometimes the most in their prophetic utterances or their prophetic gifting, or those that when you put on the spot, you say, hey, what is the Lord saying? And I don't have a word. I'm not saying nothing. Or it's a struggle for them to prophesy. Normally it's because either their confidence or their faith walk is lacking. And so if in fact Paul said, let every person prophesy according to their measure of faith, we believe, therefore we speak. I think that a person needs to spend time around a community of faith-built people that know what it's like to walk with God, whether they have things or whether they don't have things, and surrounding yourself with people of faith. I think it's also equally important to enroll into some type of formal training with the prophetic, whether it's in person or online, from a proven prophetic voice, not just somebody that's come up here overnight, but someone that's proven, has a track record, and they're walking. The fruit says they're walking with the Lord. So whether this be a school of the prophets, or whether this be a prophetic hub, or whether this be a prophetic community, you can actually find yourself, whether it's monthly or weekly, being a part of a community that continues to rehearse, re-edify and rebuild the prophetic nature, the prophetic culture around a certain group of people, so that you're always been sharpened and trained to flow in your prophetic gift.
Nice. Okay, good. That was a lot, but it was good. It was definitely good. So then, John, we know that you are a proven prophet. It's been documented. We've actually seen you in some of your School of the Supernatural, different schools that you've done. T and I have definitely witnessed. And I think, given this day and time that we're in, what is it that God is saying in the earth right now, and how should we prepare?
That's actually awesome. So I've been doing some Facebook Lives on this very subject for the past couple of weeks. I kind of took a break, but if anybody's listening, they can go back to my Facebook page, John Michael McKinney, and I still have the Facebook Live videos up. I think more importantly, it's just we have to make sure that everything we're doing does not come from fear. It comes from faith. If we're responding out of fear, then we're responding out of our intellect. When we respond out of faith, we're responding out of our inspiration from the Holy Spirit, whatever God is saying. And so I will say that there have been a lot of different prophetic utterances that have been floating around and going around concerning the times we're in with coronavirus and COVID-19. And some have called it a plague. Some say it's God's judgment. Some say it's a chemical weapon that's been engineered. And there's so many different things that's going on. And then, of course, you still have some faith-based communities that believe that they should still assemble publicly and come to church, and encouraging people to do so in the midst of the staggering numbers that we're seeing with the infections and the death rates. And then you got those that say, hey, we need to stay home. This is like the days of the Passover, where we were commanded to shut in and let the destroyer pass by, and et cetera, et cetera. There was even one that prophesied that this would be over with on March 27th. And sadly, today is April 10th. And it's still going on. So I think I think that there are a lot of different things going on. What I found is that it's for some reason difficult for prophets to get on the same page as far as what God is saying. And then, of course, the same confusion that we're seeing in our communities when it relates to our government. The mayor is saying something different than the governor is saying, something different than the president is saying. And so I'm finding that same hierarchy of confusion, if you will, that is going on in the church. Different prophets, different preachers are saying different things. And it's very rare that you can find a group that's saying the same thing. And then when you do find a group that's saying the same thing, they're isolated against this other group that's saying something different because they believe they're saying the same thing. And so we're in that timing where it's just, there are many voices going around, and we're ultimately going to have to reference our relationship with the Lord first, and then from there seek out the counsels of God. Concerning this timing, I will say that COVID-19 and coronavirus is not going away soon. I actually challenged that have been spoken. I don't care what their title is or what their television audience is in America as far as who they are. A lot of well-known faith-based leaders have gotten on social media platforms and even television to prophesy and say that God told them that this will be over with as soon as we know it. And I can tell you it's not going to. As a prophet, I can tell you, and I don't exalt myself over anybody. I don't believe in doing that. But I will say, based on what the Lord has been saying to me, I'm not convinced that this is going away anytime soon. I believe that we need to be in time of preparation. I believe that we need to be in a time that we are not throwing away our confidence in the Lord and our hope, but more so even practicing wisdom, the wisdom that comes from the Lord first, not necessarily our own wisdom, but what God is saying, what he is suggesting. I can say that I remember about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I had prophesied concerning COVID that I was talking to a group of pastors and preachers and prophets that are in alignment with me. They're under my covering, and so we have our monthly conference calls. And so, in our monthly conference call for March, I told them, I said, we're going to probably in the next couple of days, by the weekend, we're going to see the number of infections globally read off into the millions. And at this time, you're talking about the numbers were like at, I think, were 400 something thousand infections. And literally a couple of days later, I look up on the news and we're sitting at 1.2 million or a little over a million infections globally. I remember back in July of last year, July 15th, 2019, I'll never forget this. I posted on Facebook. I said, I don't know what this means, but I've been sensing this word for weeks. The Lord is saying, watch what happens in the East. And when I released that word, I saw something catastrophic coming out of the East. And then 6 or 7 months later, that's when we enter into this tragedy that we're in right now with COVID-19 and coronavirus, which came out of the East. And so I think oftentimes when the Lord is using prophets, he's not necessarily always going to prophesy reactionally as he would proactionally. I believe that the Lord has spoken to several prophets before this thing even happened to warn the church or to warn the body of Christ. But sadly, we just didn't pay attention because the going trend is if you prophesy to me about something dealing with preparation or what sounds like doom and gloom, I'm going to turn my ear off to it because our ears has been trained by the church to go crazy over words about blessing and money. And listen, I'm one of those, I'll prophesy whatever the Lord says. So there are times I can definitely get on Facebook or in person and I'll prophesy about money. I'll tell you, the Lord shows me literally, you're going to be in this place economically, or God says this is happening by this date or these couple of days. And it comes to pass. So I'm not gloating over that. I get it. Like I can prophesy about money, cars, jobs, and it happens. At the same time, I prophesy concerning preparation, judgment. What is the Lord wanting the church to do right now? And I think the church has been unprepared because we have spent years, two things. One, we have spent years fighting each other. So we don't know how to contend for the faith. And then number two, we have spent so many years partying that we don't know how to prepare. And so when we're partying over blessings and miracles and what God is doing, and man, I've seen it all. I thank God for miracles. The Lord used me to work miracles all the time. I'm thankful for it. At the same token, we cannot forget the original call is to prepare a people for the times that are coming. Because in fact, if nobody believes, we are in the end times and we're going to see things happen after Corona that I don't even think we're even really ready for yet. And so I think COVID-19 is a type of a pop quiz that is coming. And the way we are responding to the pop quiz is going to let us know how we're going to react on the test when test day comes. So if I could sum it up real quickly, I think we prepare through God's word. We prepare through community, the people that are surrounding us. We prepare by connecting to proven prophets. That is so important. We are prepared by connecting to true apostles and true pastors, true leaders that are in the church, and that they're not compromising the word of what God is saying because of the response of the people in fear. It's naturally inclining to want to give people a word of comfort and hope in times like these. And I have nothing against that. I think to keep it balanced, we also need to also prepare people, or at least say, hey, listen, God is going to bless and God is going to do this. And you're going to see this happen by this time. At the same token, make sure your relationship with the Lord is where it needs to be. Make sure that your eyes are set on what's really important, and make sure that your faith is or your belief is purely founded on your faith and what you've been withstanding all these times. Because if not, there'll be other things that will derail us. And this is how you see people that were once in the faith, they come out of it because they just weren't prepared for what was coming to derail them.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I can also tell you this. We're going to listen. We're going to see, sadly, we're going to see more death. We're going to see more I would not be surprised that if by next week we saw the global infections go over 2 million. I don't know where it's at right now. I haven't looked at it. I think last I looked at it, it was like 1.4 or something like that. I would not be surprised in the next week or so, not shortly after that, we will begin to see that number go up until cross over the 2 million mark. I've even spoken about certain areas being under martial law. We need to be prepared for that and what that looks like. And then not long after I spoke on that to somebody, I go on the news and find out that there's a certain place in Minnesota that's now coming under martial law concerning what's going on. So here it is. When we learn to embrace the prophetic, we're embracing all aspects of prophecy, encouragement, edification, exhortation, and also preparation, what to do when it comes. I think that it's important that the church does not respond in fear. I think it's important that we walk by faith and not by sight. I think it's important that we keep that same momentum that's been going on concerning the miraculous. And just because we cannot necessarily physically pray for people in a certain building at this time, but I do believe that, as Jesus said, you can send the word, as Jesus did, you can send the word there, and that word to heal the person right where they are. I also think that this is a timing where globally, not just kingdom-wise, but globally, churches, companies, corporations, small businesses, large businesses, even side hustles, we're all being forced into doing things differently. We're being forced into the online world. We're being forced to be creative and innovative with what we've been doing. And so I think this is a time to embrace innovation and creativity. This is a time to think outside of the box concerning whatever you have your hands on, whether it be ministry, whether it be a business, whether it be entrepreneurship, or even your career move, what your next career move is going to look like. I think it's a time to accept and embrace God's wisdom in those areas as well. Preparation is key. Proven prophetic voices around you is key. Alignment with what the Lord is saying in his word is key. And then more importantly, and this is very important that I say this, not using this moment or this season of what's going on with COVID-19, and because some prophets are prophesying this, that, and the other, it can be very easy to say and condemn people for not being on the same page. Now, notice earlier I did say that it's obvious that we're not on the same page, but at the same time, I don't necessarily condemn the prophets that are not speaking the same thing. I think some have been bought by the affection of the people, and so they want to give people comfort because that keeps their social media relevant. I get it. And then others, they just want to speak the heart of God. And so whether they get 3 likes or 3,000, they're going to say what God says. The reason why I brought that up is because I believe that certain people prophesy according to their personality. And I'll talk to you real quickly about this. If you have a person that all of their life they've been an encourager, or just want to see you do well, and then you have someone who's been stern all their life, and here and there they may give encouraging words, God still puts that prophetic on them, and so you'll find that there are going to be some people, they're always going to speak about what's going on behind the scenes, or it'll be a strong word. And then you'll have someone else that can prophesy, but it's more so of encouragement or hope. And I believe if we can collectively bring that together under the same spirit, that is not the same spirit, the same agenda. It's not different agendas. If it's the same spirit that's feeding those different utterances, then I believe we'll have the holistic approach of what God is saying concerning the prophetic. But if we have people that are more so in their own agenda, and they're saying, well, man, I want to prophesy the truth, but if I say this, I'm going to lose my influence with people, so I'll just give them a nice word. People do this. They do this stuff. I mean, people use ministry for their revenue. I mean, that's really what it is. They traded revelation for revenue. And so for them, it's not necessarily, I want to see people in alignment. They just want to see people give cash apps, and PayPals. And that's not what this is about. And that's a strong statement to say, but sadly, that's what the church has been reduced to. I think the great news is that even in this, there is still an army that is rising, that is here. And I believe the integrity and the purity of the prophetic is here, and it's going to heighten at different places.
I'm glad you said that, because I have been sensing that, and sensing that what we're about to see is a real revival in the church, where you're going to have to see people that have integrity, and literally the type of people that will stay on their face before God for his people in this time. And sadly seeing a lot of our modern day who we didn't realize were Sadducees and Pharisees, but a lot of them being dethroned.
Absolutely.
So that's it.
You know what? I want to speak real quickly to what you just said, because that is so important. I was recently on a phone call with a particular person that is very well known in ministry, and they have a global ministry. And I was they were watching my Facebook Live, and so we got on the phone call afterwards, and they were just kind of sharing their feedback, which was positive about the Facebook Live, and so we talked, and then of course time went by, and I remember when I got the news that the global infections of COVID-19 had reached over 1 million. This person in particular, I told them, I said, "Listen, we're going to see this happen." And they said, "Are you really believe that?" I said, "Absolutely. As I sit here, if I be a prophet, we're going to see this number go up dramatically quickly." And then when it happened, I made sure I reached out to them. I said, "Now, didn't we just have this conversation?" And it's like, "Yeah, but how did you know that?" Well, it's by way of the Lord, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We begin to go into this whole conversation about the times we're in, et cetera, and then the role of prophets and the prophetic in this particular timing that we're in, this season. And to piggyback off of what you just said, their response was, "Well, I feel like at this point, we just need to stick with just preaching the word." And I mean, that's what's worked for me all these years, just preaching the word. And I said, "Well, that may be what's worked for you all these years, but we're in a different dispensation now."
Mm-hmm.
And woe be unto the person who has a prophetic gift and can hear God, but they only want to preach scriptures only and not necessarily convey in that moment the mind of God to the people. And so life can't be about preaching only and the word only. That's more of taking an evangelistic approach to a prophetic problem. And if you're going to deal with a prophetic problem, you have to deal with it prophetically. You can't deal with it from an evangelistic standpoint, because all you're concerned about is giving the word only, and hopefully people will change their minds. Whereas in prophets, Moses, Jeremiah, Isaiah, they weren't prophesying from the Bible. They prophesied according to their current revelation, and their current revelation made the Bible headlines. But they didn't. Nowhere do you see Jeremiah and Isaiah coming up and said, "I was in my word time today, and this is what the Lord said." No, they spoke Rhema, and their Rhema became logos. Their Rhema became what we read today. I think the boldness in the prophetic has to return to people, and not being afraid to fall out with people or lose influence with people just because you're fulfilling the will of the Lord in that moment. I have a very close friend of mine. She's in ministry, strong woman of the Lord, strong prophet. Her name is Tiffany Montgomery. I know that many have heard of her, and she's a very no nonsense person, one of the sweetest, humblest people you ever meet, but very no nonsense. And I can appreciate that about her. Even she and I were on a phone call a few weeks ago, and I said something, and she said, "Well, I don't know, John, I can challenge that because so and so, so and so." And instead of me getting out of shape and who are you challenging, I said, "You know what? Okay, I see what you're saying. Not necessarily agree with it, but I see what you're saying." And that's the type of healthy dialogue that we can have with different people. I think we just don't really know how to disagree healthily with people. The disagreement does not mean you fall out with that person.
Good. I love that. Very true. Very true. Well, this is the part where we come to the end of the podcast, and it's our segment called Message.
Message, pick it up.
Where we give our final thoughts. So, John, I want you to give your final thoughts. What are the final things that you want to say and encourage people about the prophetic and what we're dealing with?
I would encourage anybody that's listening to embrace your prophetic call, whether it's a prophet, a prophetic voice, and then more importantly, discover your assignment, not just the call, but the assignment. You can be called to the prophetic, but then what is your assignment? You may or may not be in the church. You may be in the entertainment industry, and God may have set you up there, or in the educational arena, and God has set you up there. So, or even in politics, you could be the next great prophetic voice in politics. So really work hard to figure out what your assignment is within the prophetic. Embrace the call. Get around people that stir you. That now, my leader, Apostle John Eckhart, is one of the greatest wisdom nuggets he's ever given me, is to get around people that stir you, people that stir up that gift and are always sharpening that gift and moving you to kind of flow in that gift whenever possible. In this timing, I would say, again, do not respond in fear. You have to give fear a back seat. And matter of fact, put fear out on the curb in this season. You have to be able to ride with faith and belief only. And so you have to have people in your corner that are speaking similar things or the same thing concerning faith and belief. I do encourage people to continue to be prepared in their relationship with the Lord and the wisdom of God. Continue to tighten up the rope, as the old people used to say, and just be prepared for even what will come after Corona and the shaking that will come to the world after COVID-19, even the shaking in politics that we'll begin to see in different governments in different regions and countries. We're going to see some things happen. And so more importantly, just make sure that your revelation of Jesus is so strong that you're not easily moved by things that happen. And then at the same time, speak the word, speak peace, speak healing, speak power, speak miracles. Believe God for, I put on Facebook earlier today, unusual provision. I believe that God has put you on the hearts of plenty, that so that the plenty of people that He's put your name on their hearts, they'll bring you into plenty. And so I prophesied on Facebook earlier that your cupboards will not run dry. And that's the cupboards of your house, the cupboards of your mind, the cupboards of your personal economy, the cupboards of your relationships. It will not run dry in this season. I would encourage everybody to pursue the call of God, but more so pursue the heart of God like never before. Make sure your family is together. Make sure you are rediscovering and rediscerning your social arenas and your friendships. I do believe that this is also a time of shedding, that some relationships will be shed off, and then some relationships will be repositioned back in. And so it's more so just making sure that your eyes are so on God that you won't miss concerning this season. That is my message for today.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
T.
I got nothing.
Well,
I have no final thoughts.
My final thoughts is ditto to everything John has definitely just said. Also, John, I'm going to bring up, because on April 20th, your School of the Prophetic online is launching.
Yes.
And so for anyone who feels called to the prophetic, feels like that is your gifting, I'll be honest, guys, I've gone to some of John's trainings. He is an awesome teacher, and he just definitely loves to pour in the people. And so if you feel led to do that or led to that call, I would definitely encourage you to sign up for this and get under his training. Yeah, John, you just being in your classes and how you teach has been amazing and powerful. And I think, T, we've been to 2 or 3 different classes.
We've been to 3.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate the plug. It's going to be awesome. And if anybody's listening, you can register at JMM. That's M as in Mary. JMMschool.eventbrite.com. That's JMMschool.eventbrite.com. That is for the John Michael McKinney School of the Prophetic. And we'll also be launching the John Michael McKinney School of the Supernatural. And these are online, so you'll be doing everything online. And, once this passes over, we'll be doing physical gatherings. But for the most part, this will be online so that anybody can take a part of this anywhere. And a lot of the teachings will be on demand and live. So if you can't catch a live class, you can definitely log in and catch the on-demand video.
Wonderful. And John, if they wanted to follow you on social media, where can they find you?
So I'm on Facebook. That's under my name, John Michael McKinney. John without an H. So it's JON-MICHAEL, and then my last name, McKinney, on Facebook. And then also on Instagram, just one word, John Michael McKinney, no hyphen, just one word on Instagram. So Instagram, John Michael McKinney. Facebook, JON-MICHAEL.
T, where can they find you?
Facebook is
always,
Tanisha
guys,
Williams,
you can find me
and
on
Instagram
Facebook
is
and
Styles by
Instagram at
Tanisha J.
Charmaine Kears, as well as SheLaughsPodcast.com. We now have a website, so look for more updates there.
Yay.
And as always, guys, we're praying for you, and we're just sending all types of love to you throughout this entire season. Until next week, guys, be blessed.
Blessed by today's discussion. To keep up with the latest on the She Laughs podcast, be sure to subscribe on most major streaming platforms. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you feel led to donate, please send donations to paypal.me/She Laughs. And don't forget to send us your questions as well. We'd love to hear from you. As always, stay blessed.